All right, here go the Redskins. They booing the hell out of us, as they should.
In the 2018 NFL Draft, the Washington Redskins select Da'Ron Payne.
Oh my God! What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? I knew they was gonna do this bullshit. Of all the guys sitting here, you take Daron Payne? What are you doing? This is why it's hard to be a goddamn Redskins fan. This bullshit right here. Daron Payne is just another guy on the defensive line, okay? He can't rush the quarterback. They love taking Alabama players. This is the second year in a row we took an Alabama player when we had no business taking an Alabama player. We took one in the second round last year, and Ryan Anderson is going to be a bum. We take another one. I don't know if this guy's going to be a bum, but there were better players on the board. There were better guys that could have helped this defense right away, and you take Daron Payne? This is why we're a bad football team. This is why our franchise continues to be a middling franchise, 7-9, 8-8, 8-7-1. This is why we can't make the playoffs 2 years in a row. This is why we're not a good. This is why right now the odds makers have us winning 5 games this season. That's why they have us winning 5 games this year, because of stupid ass selections like that. The Saints traded up to 14. You know why they traded up to 14? Because there's a bunch of good-ass football players sitting there. And we passed on them to pick Daron motherfucking Payne. Excuse my language. Stupid as hell. Piss me off. Who else could it be? With me, your man, Louie Tee, here on behalf of the Commanders Kings, with a brand new installment of Louie's Locked and Loaded. Today, I'm locked and loaded on Daron Payne. And look, you just came into one of the classic rants from this channel's history. A lot of people bring it up when we talk about Daron Payne. It's one that kind of goes down in infamy for me. It's not one of my prouder moments, but it was raw emotion. It was how I felt in the moment. I wasn't wrong about Ryan Anderson. He turned out to be an absolute bum. And Daron Payne, up until 2022, felt like a jag, right? Like, he was okay, he was cool, but for the money that we're paying Daron Payne, it's not okay to be cool. And look, let me start by saying I love Daron Payne. That emotion you saw from me back in 2018 during the draft when he was selected was a byproduct of me feeling like Daron Payne was nothing more than a run-defending defensive tackle. You don't pick those in the first round in the top 15. You need a run-plugging defensive tackle. You can get those in the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh round. You get those undrafted. You don't have to spend the 13th overall pick to get a guy that can't get the quarterback, right? So that was where that emotion came from. Now, really, if you look at the body of work of Daron Payne, that's what he's been. A run-stopping, very reliable, right, guy that plays a ton of snaps, doesn't miss games, all of that good stuff. But for the money he's being paid, you expect so much more. And he won me over. I'm a huge Daron Payne fan. He won me over in 2022. That contract year, he exploded. He showed us things that he hadn't seen or hadn't shown us up until that point. And I was convinced I was wrong. He was worth the 13th overall pick back in 2018. If he could do that more consistently, and maybe finally he had reached the point where he had tapped fully into his potential, and this is what he was going to be moving forward, and that was just the tip of the iceberg in 2022. But since that contract, he's gone back to the Daron Payne that we saw previous of 2022, and I need more from Daron Payne. And I know he's capable. I know he's capable. So let's talk about Daron Payne. Let's talk about what he's done this season, what he's done in the past, and what I'm looking for from Daron Payne moving forward. Let's take a look at some of the numbers, though, that support Daron Payne needing to be better. So this is Daron Payne's NFL career to this point. And as you can see, Payne's been pretty consistent as a somewhere between a 2 to 5 sack guy in his career. Started out first season as a rookie, 5 sacks, 56 tackles, 6 tackles for loss in that rookie season. You go to 2019, his second season in the league, 2 sacks, 56 tackles once again, 3 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hits. He had 8 in his rookie season in terms of quarterback hits. Go to 2020, his third season in the league, 3 tackles or 3 sacks, 54 tackles combined, 7 tackles for loss. That's a career high, the 7 tackles for loss, and 8 quarterback hits. All right, so then you go to 2021, and they had a decision to make after the 2020 season. They decided to pick up his 5th-year option, and why not? He's been a really solid defensive tackle. 2021, 4.5 sacks, career second highest of his career. His rookie season at 5 sacks, still the highest at that point. 61 tackles. That's a career high in 2021. And then the 6 tackles for loss and the 15 quarterback hits. So you started to see him get to the quarterback more, not necessarily getting to the quarterback with him still having the ball in his hands, but making the quarterback uncomfortable, hitting him. Those count, right? So that's a big deal. You saw that. That's a huge uptick from his previous career high of 8 quarterback hits. Then you get to 2022, and this was the season that put him on the map. He was a Pro Bowl player in 2022. This was the contract season. 11.5 sacks, obviously by far and away his most of his career, the biggest total that he's put out, by double anything else he's done in his career to this point. 64 combined tackles. That is also a career high that he had in 2022. The 18 tackles for loss was even more impressive than the 11.5 sacks, because that shows disruptiveness in the backfield. It shows the ability to blow up plays, whether you're getting to the quarterback, the running back. If you tackle a guy for a 2-yard loss on first down and it's now 2nd and 12, if you tackle a guy for a 2-yard loss on 2nd and 9 and it's now 3rd and 11, those are big plays. Those tackle for losses are. They throw teams off of their path of staying ahead of the chains. He was massive in the tackle for loss department at 18. He was top 3 in the league that year in tackles for loss at 18. He was the number 1 defensive tackle that year for tackles for loss in 2022. And he also had a safety, if you recall, which was also a tackle for loss against the Eagles in that drubbing 24-8 early in that season. And so he was massive in 2022, to say the least. And again, that was his lone Pro Bowl appearance. So we're all excited. He gets the massive contract that offseason in 2023. They franchise tag him. Then they work out the long-term deal. And we're expecting big things from him. And even though it was disappointing from a sack perspective in 2023, he was still really effective. There were games. Remember the Denver Broncos possession where he wrecked the entire possession? He had a tackle for loss, a batted ball, and then a sack to end the possession. All in the same possession, 3 successive plays against the Denver Broncos in that Week 2 contest last year. There were games, that Broncos game, one of the Giants game, the Atlanta Falcons game, where he was just disruptive, period, end of discussion. And so even though the sack numbers weren't there last year, which was a bit disappointing, 4 sacks, so he kind of reverted back to what he was prior to the 2022 season, he still was around the football and very disruptive and in the backfield. So 53 combined tackles. All right. But the 13 tackles for loss shows he was still impactful and he was still impacting plays and games and possessions. 11 quarterback hits. All right. He had 20 the previous year, which obviously was a career high. But he had 11, so he's still in double digits in the quarterback hits. He was around the football quite a bit. But then there's this year. And I was as excited about Daron Payne as any player. I talked about several players that I thought would really benefit. Quan Martin, I think, was at the top of my list of guys that was going to probably most benefit from the duo of Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. coming over here defensively as defensive masterminds to help, bolster guys' play from the year prior. And I thought Quan Martin would be the biggest beneficiary. I also thought that we would see a guy like Emmanuel Forbes maybe benefit. Those secondary guys really benefit. But I also said I expected both Allen and Payne to really benefit because we saw the activity of the Cowboys up front. We saw guys that were ancillary like Dante Fowler Jr. and Dorrance Armstrong get to the quarterback. They did all of that without true defensive tackles that really impacted the game. So I figured with all of the things they did schematically to get guys one-on-one matchups, to free guys up, Payne and Allen were going to be two of the biggest beneficiaries defensively this year to really wreak havoc. Instead of having to be two gappers that, are peeking around the offensive lineman and seeing where the running back was going to go before making a decision, you can now get into the backfield as a one-gap penetrator and disrupt things the way that Da'Ron Payne was made to do it. And remember what we saw early in the season against Tampa Bay week 1. He was constantly in the backfield, but he was getting pushed up the field, and the running backs were running right by him. But he had 2 opportunities in that game, one to sack Baker Mayfield, the other to get a tackle for loss, and he missed, remember? So but he was flashing, and he looked like he was going to be a problem this year, and I was like, okay, that's the Da'Ron Payne I'm expecting. The next week against the Giants, same thing, constantly in the backfield, but getting pushed up the field, not getting to the running back, not winning one-on-one matchups to get to the quarterback. He had one pressure in that game that led to the only sack of Daniel Jones. He got the pressure on that play. It didn't get to Daniel Jones, but it forced him to step up, and Cleveland Farrell cleaned up the mess. And so I said, I see Da'Ron Payne's impact. He's having the impact that I think. Now it's just got to turn into statistical data that we can see, we can feel, we can touch and say, hey, Daron is impacting games. And then after that, once we continued to get gashed on the ground, something changed. And the defensive coordinator, Joe Witt Jr., kind of had a come to Jesus moment with Dan Quinn when they said, we can't keep letting these defensive tackles run up the field. They've got a 2-gap. They've got to stay in their lanes so that we can stop the run better. And we got better at stopping the run because we were getting absolutely gashed through the first 4 weeks of the season. Arizona was the last game where it was just like, oh my God, we just can't stop the run, right? Where they were running at will on us. I don't think we've given up since then a 100-yard rusher until I think it was week 8 against the Bears with Swift. Totality-wise, we were giving up 150 yards, it felt like, every week. But it was 3 different dudes amassing 132 yards or 141 yards or 123 yards on the ground. It wasn't just one guy getting us like it was early in the season. Didn't matter who it was, whether it's Devin Singletary or it was in week 4, it was James Conner who killed us on the ground. It was the Swift run. Remember, he really didn't do anything until that big run. And then, obviously, week 11 against Saquon Barkley, he had a field day as well. But after they started 2-gapping, Payne started to be less and less effective in terms of making plays. But that's just, to me, a small part of the equation. He's getting one-on-one matchups. He's not winning them. He's not getting to the quarterback. He is not making impactful plays. He's getting blocked by tight ends at times. He's not being as aggressive as he once was. He's just on the field at this point. And these numbers bear that out. And so you look at his numbers for this season. Right now, he has a sack and a half through 11 games. Like, he's on pace for less than 3 sacks this season. That would be a career low. If he doesn't get another half of sack this season, that's a career low for him. He's on pace right now for 2.5 sacks this season, which would be his second lowest total of his career. Now, again, he's playing in a different system. Maybe he has to adjust, but if you're talented, it doesn't really matter what system you play. Your talents should shine through no matter the system. No matter what you're being asked to do, when you get a one-on-one matchup, you should win. And we've heard Joe Witt Jr. talk about not having independent contractors. Everybody needs to do their job. And there may be a little bit of that as to why he's not being more effective, but he's getting more than enough opportunities to win one-on-one matchups, and he's not doing it. Combined tackles, right now, he has 26. He's on pace right now for 48 combined tackles. It would be the lowest of his NFL career to this point. You look at tackles for loss, he had been thriving in that department the last 2 years. He was really impacting football games, getting into the backfield, making his presence felt. This man has one single tackle for loss this season. That is absurd at this point. We are going into week 12, and Da'Ron Payne has one tackle for loss this season. And then this number is eye-popping because it just goes to show you just how ineffective he's been. He's only touched the quarterback 3 times this season. 3 quarterback hits for Da'Ron Payne on the season. Okay, this man has had seasons, each of the last 3 years, of 15, 20, and 11 quarterback hits. He's not even on pace to get to 7 this year. He's on pace to get to 5 QB hits this season. That would be his second worst of his career since his second season in the NFL. These are alarming numbers, folks. He's doing, and here's the kicker. This is all being done with him playing the lowest percentage of snaps of his NFL career. This was a guy that we would make excuses for when he didn't have the type of production because, hey, he was playing 92% of the snaps. Find me another defensive tackle that's doing that in the NFL. There weren't many, if any, doing that. Aaron Donald wasn't doing that. Chris Jones wasn't doing that. Quentin Williams wasn't doing that. No other team was asking their defensive tackle, their 305, 310-pound defensive behemoth, to play 92% of snaps in any individual game. And this guy was doing it every week. So I had a little bit of grace and mercy when he didn't perform at this ridiculous Superman level like he did in 2022 because we were asking a lot of him that other teams didn't ask of their defensive tackles. Well, now this group isn't asking him to do that anymore. He may play 70%, but normally he's in the 60s like everybody else in the league at the defensive tackle position. He's playing 64% of the snaps, 67% of the snaps. He might get to 72%, but he's not playing the 92, the 94, the 96, which was incredible last year, at times when he'd be playing almost the entire game, never come off the field. That's not the case anymore. He's getting the breather. He should be fresh. He should be disruptive and dominant, and it's not happening. As a matter of fact, he's on pace for statistically his worst season of his career. And this is why this is a problem for me, because if you are the Commanders, look at what you are paying Da'Ron Payne right now. All right. Look at what you're paying him to be. All right. So this is a list of the highest paid interior defensive linemen in the NFL. Contractually, you see the list of guys and where they rank. Right now, Da'Ron Payne, AVV-wise, right now is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, ninth highest paid defensive tackle, AAV-wise. Now, if you're talking about totality of the deal, and we'll put this red box around here so we can take a look at this. These are all, this red box that you see in front of you highlights all of the defensive tackles that have a $90 million contract or greater in terms of excess, right? Excess, rather. The totality of the contract, 90 million or more, right? So in the league right now, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 defensive tackles who are being paid $90 million total for their entire contract or more, right? So Daron is ninth highest paid. He's the ninth highest paid defensive tackle in the NFL. And he's one of 10 defensive tackles being paid a contract that is of $90 million in value or greater. All right. So he's of an elite class of defensive tackles. Yet, as you look, and actually I take that back, he is one of 9, because as you can see, DeForest Buckner, his contract is not of 90 million value, but rather a 46 because of the length left on that contract. But I digress. Here's what is important. You look at the names on this list, right? There are only 1 or 2 guys that, from a production standpoint, don't belong in this group. Christian Wilkins, I never felt like deserved to be one of the highest paid defensive tackles. It's the reason why the Dolphins let him leave. He's not a difference maker at the defensive tackle position. He's just not. And even with that said, I think he has 3 sacks this year, which is 2 more than Da'Ron Payne, right? Christian Wilkins, to me, isn't an impact defensive tackle. He just isn't. Some of the numbers may say that they are, but you watch him in his career in Miami, and he just, to me, just never really was that guy. But Chris Jones, we know, is a Hall of Fame defensive tackle. That's why he's being paid the money that he's being paid. All right. And he's not having the best season of his career, but he still got 3 sacks this year. And this guy sees more double and triple teams than any other defensive tackle in the NFL. All right. And we know at moment's notice, he can turn it up and take over a ball game, right? We know who he is. Nnamdi Madubuike had a 12.5 sack season last year, burst onto the scene, got this massive deal from the Ravens, and he's playing well again this year. I think he has 5 sacks, 5.5 sacks this year, and he's playing well, and he's impacting the game yet again, right? Aleem McNeil, I watched this man wreck the game against the Texans just a couple of weekends ago. This guy is a stud. Stops the run, physical presence up front, can get in the backfield, make plays behind the line of scrimmage. He's a disruptor, right? Worth the money. Derek Brown out for the season, so he's really not in the conversation. But when he's healthy, we know what he's capable of. Quinnen Williams had a down season last year. I think he had 4 or 5 sacks total last year, but we know what he is. This year, he's got 6 sacks. He's back to being the Quinnen Williams on a defense that's way worse than it's been the last 3-4 years. He's still shining and still getting the job done. Jeffrey Simmons, big Jeff Simmons. We know what he's all about. He's a game wrecker. All right, he has 4 sacks, 3-4 sacks this season, if I'm not mistaken. And again, he's one of those guys we know can take over a game. I think he has like 6 or 7 tackles for loss this season. Like, again, he's going to hit double digits in tackles for loss. He impacts football games, right? DeForest Buckner, again, we know what he's capable of. He's been at it a long time. Of all of these guys, he and Chris Jones are the only guys that are 30 years old on this list of defensive tackles, and yet they're still producing at a very high level. I watched a game, I think 3-4 weeks ago, where DeForest Buckner, I think he had 2 sacks. I want to say it was the Vikings game on Sunday Night Football. I think he had 2 sacks, a sack and a half in that game. He's still one of those guys. It can wreck a game, right? And then there's Dexter Lawrence. Dexter Lawrence has 9 sacks this season, okay? Like, I could just stop right there. Dexter Lawrence has 9 sacks this season, okay? Need I say more? At one point, he was leading the entire NFL in sacks from the defensive tackle position. He's actually hit a drought. He had 9 sacks like 3 weeks ago, and he hasn't gotten to the quarterback in like 3 weeks. And he's had a bye week here. So I don't need to talk to you about Dexter Lawrence. And then there's Da'Ron Payne, and I showed you the numbers. Man has 1.5 sacks. The man has 1 tackle for loss. The man is on pace for the lowest combined tackles of his career. The man has, like, what was the number? 3 quarterback hits on the season? Are you kidding me? Like, what are we talking about here? This man is the 9th highest paid defensive tackle in the league, and he's producing like the 59th highest paid defensive tackle. I mean, you keep going down this list, and there are a lot of guys that are performing at a high level. Vita Vea and Ed Oliver's playing really well this season. And I could keep going and going with the guys that are on this list that are playing at a very high level. It ain't Daron Payne. And that, to me, is very frustrating. Very frustrating. So here's my challenge to Daron Payne. All right. You're going to go up against a banged up, battered, and bruised Dallas Cowboys offensive line on Sunday. Whether Zach Martin starts and plays, whether Tyler Smith starts and plays, it doesn't matter, okay? Both of them are compromised health-wise if they do play. I don't think Zach Martin's going to play in this game, by the way. And I wouldn't be shocked if Tyler Smith can't go either. So if they put TJ Bass in front of you, if they put Chuma Udoga in front of you, I need you to shred him. I need you to obliterate him. I need you to beat whomever they put in front of you to a pulp. Remind us of why you're the 9th highest paid defensive tackle. Remind us why we're paying you $23 million a year. Remind us of why you were a Pro Bowler and one of the best defensive tackles in the league back in 2022. We need a reminder because a lot of people have forgotten, including me. And I'm one of the biggest Daron Payne advocates you'll find. You changed the way I thought about you back in 2022. But I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. And you know what? if we can't get more out of Daron Payne, and again, it could be the system, right? Could be him trying to, really adjust and kind of get familiar with what they're asking him to do and how to be. And maybe next year he'll explode back onto the scene after he's more comfortable in this defense and what they're asking him to do. But I just expect Daron Payne to win one-on-one matchups against guards in the NFL on a consistent basis. Unless he's going up against somebody elite, I expect him to win. And that's just not happening. And when they do the action up front, when they're doing the twist and the stunts, he's not winning. He's not coming free. And at some point, I need to see Daron Payne flash, show me something, be an impact player. Is that guy there? Or was I right back in 2018 when I said that Daron Payne was nothing more than a run-stopping defensive tackle? Because right now, it's starting to feel that way. Show me that you can be the Daron Payne that set the NFL ablaze in 2022, that made us feel like we had an elite defensive tackle. Because if you can't, what's the purpose of paying you $23 million? You can give that money to other guys that belong here. We can draft new defensive tackles, wipe the slate clean, and pay guys a lot less to give us the same production that you're giving us. I know you're capable. You're a good dude in the locker room. You work hard. Hey, you don't miss games. You play a high number of snaps if you need to. You do everything that you would love to see from a defensive tackle, except impact the game now. Show us. I'm waiting to see it. I'm locked and I'm loaded. I'd hate to have to fire off on you, Daron. I'm rooting for you, dude. Please show us something. Show us a pulse. Show us the Daron Payne that we know is in there. Because right now, I'm starting to doubt. I don't know about you, but I'm starting to doubt. And at this point, as we continue to turn this roster over, if you ain't a part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. We'll see what he does this weekend. He's going to have a great opportunity to get back on track. I'm looking forward to seeing that happen. Turn me up, 94. Turn me up. I'm your man, Louie Tee, here on behalf of the Commanders Kings. And my friends, I'm Louie, and I'm locked, and I'm loaded. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.
Louie Tee Network.